The moment she looked at the menu, her fingers began to tremble. Not slightly, but in that quiet, uncontrollable way that comes when fear is no longer something you hide. It's something that has already reached your bones. The lights above their table were warm and golden, the kind that made everything look softer than it really was. The restaurant hummed with quiet laughter, clinking glasses, and the low murmur of people who had never had to calculate the cost of happiness. But for her, every number on that menu, you felt like a ticking clock. And then, barely above a whisper, she said the words that almost no one ever says out loud. "I can't afford this date." Before we begin this emotional journey, if stories that touch the heart and restore faith in humanity matter to you, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, Stories Beyond the Porch. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most. She had almost canceled 3 times. All afternoon, she had stared at her phone, her thumb hovering over his name, trying to convince herself that honesty was better than humiliation. But something, maybe loneliness, maybe exhaustion, maybe the quiet hope she had buried long ago, had made her show up. Her name was Elena, and life had not been kind to her. At 29, she carried the invisible weight of someone twice her age. Her mornings began before sunrise, not because she wanted productivity, but because sleep rarely stayed long enough to feel like rest. Bills stacked on her kitchen counter like quiet accusations: rent, groceries, medicine for her mother. Her father had passed away 3 years ago, leaving behind debts that felt larger than grief itself. Her younger brother was still studying, her mother's health was fragile, and Elena had become the bridge holding everything together. 2 jobs, one during the day at a small office where her effort was expected but rarely noticed. Another in the evenings, tutoring children whose parents paid just enough to keep her afloat, never enough to let her breathe. Dating had stopped being part of her life long ago. Love was a luxury, and luxuries were for people who weren't calculating bus fare. So when Daniel had asked her out, she had almost laughed. He was different, not flashy, not loud, not trying too hard. Just steady, a single father. She had met him while helping his daughter with schoolwork. Mia had struggled with math, and Elena had become her tutor. Over weeks, she had seen the quiet dedication in the way Daniel packed Ms. lunch every morning, the way he remembered her smallest preferences, the way exhaustion lived behind his calm smile. He wasn't perfect, but he was real, and real was rare. When he had asked her to dinner, she had hesitated. Not because she didn't want to go, but because she knew what a night like that would cost. Emotionally, financially, dignity-wise. Still, she had said yes. And now, sitting across from him in a restaurant that felt far too beautiful for her life, the reality hit her like a wave she couldn't outrun. Every dish felt like a debt, every drink like a compromise. She wasn't worried about pride. She was worried about survival. Because tomorrow's groceries were already uncertain. And so the truth slipped out before she could stop it. "I can't afford this date." She didn't cry, not immediately, but the silence that followed felt heavier than any rejection. She expected embarrassment, pity, awkward reassurance, or worse, quiet judgment. Instead, Daniel didn't even blink. He didn't rush to say it didn't matter. He didn't brush it aside. He simply looked at her, really looked at her, in a way no one had in years. And something shifted, because Daniel understood struggle in a way most people didn't. His wife had passed away 5 years earlier. One day she was laughing in the kitchen. The next, she was gone. A sudden illness. A hospital bill that arrived before the funeral flowers had wilted. Grief had not come alone. It had brought responsibility. He had learned how to braid hair from YouTube tutorials. how to cook without burning everything, how to attend school meetings alone without looking broken, how to answer Mia's late night question, "Will you leave me too?" He had learned how expensive life becomes when you are the only one left holding it together. So when Alina whispered her truth, he didn't see awkwardness. He saw courage, the kind that comes from being tired of pretending. And in that moment, he made a choice that neither of them would forget. He closed the menu, not dramatically, not performatively, just quietly, and then he said something that would ripple through her life in ways she could never have imagined. Not in words meant to impress, but in actions meant to restore dignity. The night changed direction. Not toward luxury, but toward something far more powerful, understanding. They left the restaurant. Not because of rejection, but because Daniel suggested something simpler. They walked instead, through streets glowing under soft lights, past small shops and quiet laughter, toward a modest street vendor where he bought 2 cups of tea and shared a story about how Mia believed the moon followed their car home every night. For the first time in months, Alina laughed without calculating anything, and Daniel listened, really listened, as she spoke about her family, her responsibilities, her fears of becoming someone who forgot how to dream. There was no rescue in his gestures, no savior complex, only partnership. Over the following weeks, something unexpected began to grow. Not a romance built on fantasy, but a connection rooted in respect. Daniel never treated her like someone who needed saving. He treated her like someone who deserved ease. He began inviting her to help Mia not as a tutor, but as a friend. She started spending evenings at their home, simple dinners, homework sessions, shared stories. Mia adored her. And slowly, the emptiness in Alina's life softened. Then came the moment that changed everything. Daniel had been saving quietly, not for something grand, but for stability, and he saw something in Alina that reminded him of his late wife's dream, a small learning center for children who couldn't afford proper tutoring. One evening, he showed her an empty space he had been renting out for storage. Nothing fancy, just 4 walls. Possibility, he didn't offer it as charity, he offered it as partnership, a place where her skills could become more than survival. A place where her effort could build something lasting. Alina cried that night, not from sadness, but from relief. Within months, the small tutoring center opened. Children came, then more came, word spread. Parents trusted her. And for the first time in years, her work began to feel like purpose instead of pressure. Life didn't become perfect. Bills didn't disappear. Grief didn't vanish. But hope returned, and sometimes that's enough to rebuild everything. Daniel didn't change her life by paying for a meal. He changed it by removing the shame from her honesty, by showing her that vulnerability isn't weakness, that dignity matters more than display, and that sometimes the most powerful reaction isn't grand, it's gentle. As their bond deepened, so did Mia's laughter. And one day, while watching Mia draw a picture of the 3 of them standing under a smiling sun, Alina realized something she had never dared to imagine. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. If this story touched your heart, to take a moment now to like, share, and comment. Let us know where you're watching from. Your voice helps keep stories like this alive. Special request: before you leave, comment the line, "Kindness costs nothing, but changes everything." Because sometimes the smallest reactions create the biggest transformations. And somewhere out there, someone is still whispering, "I can't afford this." Maybe what they really need is someone who answers with understanding instead of judgment.